My regular customers know that I take the Moka Pot seriously. It's not a toy. It's not a phony espresso maker. It does its own thing, and quite well if you can master it. It's worthy of respect. E&B Lab makes a line of Moka Pots with a modified upper screen, which they call a competition filter, and it clearly affects the brew. The openings are smaller than on the stock Bialetti screen, and precisely made, like a VST basket. The filters can be bought separately, and they're compatible with Bialetti brewers. I'm going to show you how the screen works and demonstrate some advanced Moka Pot voodoo. We'll talk about dialing in your brewing time with grind adjustments and by using paper filters to help distribute the water more evenly and avoid channeling, and increase back pressure to slow the infusion. I'll share a few other tips along the way as well. Of course, this is all purely academic unless we like what we find in the cup. So let's get brewing, shall we? Oh my God.
It's like a miracle.
This tutorial is built on top of an earlier one called Moka Pot Voodoo, where I explain the principles of Moka Pot brewing in depth and demonstrate the only method that produces the intense, concentrated flavor that many of us are looking for. If you haven't seen that video, I would urge you to pause here, go watch it, and then return. This video extends and refines the voodoo method, but I'm not going to explain it again. For a brief recap, the three elements of Moka Pot voodoo are: first, to fill the funnel properly to prevent channeling; second, to slow the brew for thorough, even extraction; and third, to stop the brewing process before too much water passes through the coffee, which would dilute it. If you're filling the funnel, as I taught you in the first video, and you still see some evidence of channeling or inconsistent extraction, you might have some trouble with grinding. Rather than spend heaps of money on an expensive new grinder, you can try using a paper filter under the coffee to distribute the water more evenly. AeroPress filters are cheap and available everywhere. Simply fold one like this and cut it to fit. It takes only a few seconds, and the filter can be reused several times. You only need to rinse it. You put the filter in first, then fill with coffee as I showed you in the first video. You can combine this trick with any of the others. It's definitely worth a try if you're not quite hitting your ideal brew. Last time I used a blade grinder, so this time I'm using a burr grinder. Now, with a burr grinder, you get more control over particle size, and you can alter your brewing time with grind adjustments. But take care, if the coffee is too fine, you'll guarantee channeling. The puck will offer so much resistance that the water can only find a weak spot and gush through. Grind too coarse, and the brew finishes too soon for good extraction. Grit size is a tuning knob that you can play with, but don't go wild. A good setting is between espresso and pour over. Within that window, you can play around. Last time I used an electric range, so this time I'll use gas. Just as before, once you get the grind right and learn to fill the funnel correctly, it's easy to maintain a slow, steady brew for a thorough, even extraction. Your total brew time should land within a window of 2 minutes minimum to 3 minutes maximum. In general, a slower brew will be more concentrated and show more bitterness, while a faster brew will taste cleaner with more acidity in the cup. If you're a real Moka Pot nerd like me, you'll find that with practice, you can dial in your brewing time to suit different coffees. Always fill the boiler to the bottom of the relief valve, which is 300 milliliters on the popular 6-cup model. More water is a larger mass that's harder to push, so the brew goes slower. A partial fill speeds up the brewing process too much. Now, by no means use all of that water in the boiler. If you do, the coffee will be weak. Control the concentration by cooling the Moka Pot when the coffee in the upper chamber reaches the right level for your preferred ratio. Let me explain. I recommend a ratio of 1:3 as a good starting point. I've got a 6-cup Moka Pot where the bottom point of the spout corresponds to 150 milliliters of liquid. So if my dose weighs 40 grams, I'll be looking for 120 milliliters of brewed coffee, a bit below that point. I just eyeball it. This doesn't have to be precise. 40 grams in for 120 milliliters out is a 1-to-3 ratio. If I let the upper chamber fill to 150 milliliters, right at that point, that's roughly a 1-to-4 ratio, which is also perfectly reasonable. Your brewing ratio is another tuning knob that you can play with. Remember that the moka pot funnel has to be filled by volume, not weight, but you still need to weigh your dose. Is that confusing? I'll try to explain. Different coffees have different densities. A funnel full of this low-altitude Brazilian weighs about 33 grams, while this high-altitude Kenyan weighs 40. So once you dial in the right grit size and volume for a new coffee, you should weigh the dose so that you'll know how much coffee to grind and how much water to push through it to hit the brewing ratio that you prefer. As you can see, there are no problems using a paper filter on the bottom of the funnel. It doesn't really slow down noticeably. It's nice and steady. And that puck looks great, doesn't it? It feels solid and all of the spent grounds are wet. This is exactly what you're looking for. Now let's find out what the E&B Lab competition filter does to our coffee. Before you start, understand that it will increase back pressure and slow the brew. You'll probably have to grind coarser than you normally do to prevent channeling. You can clearly see that the grind is coarser, but this puck is perfectly intact. Success! Even with a coarser grind, the coffee is stronger than it was with the standard Bialetti screen. It's definitely more bitter too. I thought that these very small holes might block the fines and we'd end up with a lighter texture, but E&B Lab seems to have nailed it. There's no buildup of fines on the surface of the puck, and the coffee's texture is rich and smooth. Well done! The competition filter works as advertised. Now I'll try to duplicate the effect with an AeroPress filter on top of the coffee. It's brewing slowly and steadily as you'd expect. In the cup, it's stronger and more bitter than it was with the stock Bialetti screen, but the texture is lighter. And when we check the puck, we can see that a lot of fines collected on top of the coffee. Obviously, the paper filter blocks them, so we're not going to get that full-on espresso mouthfeel, which is not necessarily bad. You might enjoy a more pronounced flavor with a lighter texture. I'm only saying that this hack does not replicate the effect of the E&B Lab filter. This is a third option, and by no means a bad one. I hope I've answered most of your questions and offered some fresh ideas and insights that will help you to refine your moka pot brewing and bring it even closer to your ideal. Well, that's all for today. In my next video, I'll help you reach V60 perfection with a few advanced tips and tricks. Later, I'll be doing several more espresso videos, exploring some AeroPress voodoo, and showing you how to make decent foamed milk without steam. And I think I'll revisit the Bricka-Pot and try some of this new moka pot magic on it. So keep in touch. Cheers!